The Institute of Internal Auditors presents All Things Internal Audit. In this episode, Scott Madenburg and Sanjay Vadlamani talk trust and why it's the defining currency of internal audit. From hyper-growth environments to large, mature organizations, they discuss how audit teams can build credibility, avoid the gotcha cop perception, and deliver value without slowing the business down. Through real-world use cases, they share practical examples of how trust enables earlier insights, stronger controls, and a true seat at the table.
Hey, Sanjay, it sounds like you had a rough morning with the computer and the train and the leaks, but you persevered as you always do. But you know what? That's what makes you and others a great auditor, because we work in the gray and we're dealing with the mess, but we persevere. So
Exactly. We're nimble.
we're very nimble. Maybe for the audience, I don't just so you just know who we are. I am Scott Madenburg. I'm the founder and president of Arc Hybrid and have been part of this journey for over 2 decades.
My name's Sanjay Vadlamani. I'm a senior manager, internal controls here at PayJoy. Over 17 years in the industry.
So let me start off with this one. When you think about trust in the context of internal audit, what does it actually mean as far as day-to-day work?
That's a great question. And I think here at PayJoy, trust, it's inserting yourself into the business, understanding the business, translating complexity into clear solutions that don't slow the business down. It's solving problems that the solutions are felt today, but not in reinventing something that is going to be more bureaucratic and that's unnecessary.
Yeah, and I agree. From my own perspective, what I have felt from internal audit is, in part of it's because of misnomers of what people always thought about internal audit was getting that social capital. So establishing those relationships and building trust amongst the organization, your stakeholders. And the hardest is always trying to get management to make sure they have that trust so that they can be a supporter of internal audit. But there's also the flip side is there's another form of trust I think that's often we have to look at. And that's when we are going to actually do an audit. And that when we're doing that process, that the folks that we're auditing trust us enough to give us the unfiltered information, that they're going to give us that raw spreadsheet with their notes on it, not redacted, and so that we can actually do the best work. Because at the end of the day, yes, internal audit's a independent function, but we are all part of the same team.
I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, I'll kind of dovetail on that and say, I think it's imperative that we're not looked upon as gotcha cops. To your point of sharing, sensitive information that would be very useful in a scoping exercise when we're trying to understand what are the areas that we want to focus on to provide value. If they're hiding because they're thinking that we're going to then hang them out to dry, that's counterproductive. So I totally agree.
From my perspective, and I've mentioned this to you in the past, is the risk is evolving so fast for organizations. And the one thing that I think is so interesting from internal audit is that we are probably one of the only few people within the organization that actually goes and sees the entire organization. And whether that's, audits where we actually, talk to the security guard at the front of the office building or out in the field, or then have a conversation with the CFO, we have this whole visibility. So the value we can bring to the organization is this holistic view that I feel that everyone in the organization, so when you're thinking about risk and controls, we can bring this kind of perspective of how does the left hand and the right hand actually work, and maybe what we can bring together.
I completely agree. I think, and I'm just thinking here at where I work, having that holistic view being able to plug and play within different groups when you understand what the company's overall goals are. And there might be issues that a specific team might not be aware of. You bring that to the table. It, I think, increases visibility. It makes this overall solution, I think, better. And it just creates, I think, a more healthy discussion because there's a lot of unforeseen hidden risks that a team may not be aware of. And for them, the velocity of that risk and the impact could be a lot greater.
Yeah, and the one thing I want to, and I kind of to that point, and that is internal auditors. The more you do internal audit, the more critical thinking you do. The better you get at seeing the forest through the trees and asking the question of why. And if we can help bring some insights and some innovation to the organization, we can show our true value.
And that kind of made me think of this concept that's been going around for a while, and I think is really relevant to this is connected risk. This whole concept that risks are not in silos. Risks aren't on a piece of paper. It is real. We have to understand how they connect from, the go-to-market team to the sales team, to finance, to accounting, to the month-end close. It does exist, and understanding that through line, I think, is where we really have value.
Yeah, and I would also argue that besides the connected risk, there's sometimes a connected control.
Yes.
And I think that's something that we have to think about a lot too, is to mitigate that risk. How does that control that maybe that's even done just in, the AP function, but how does that impact other areas of the business? But I think it's great. As far as what do you feel are some of the biggest gaps between audits, views, and beliefs and leadership's perceptions? And I know that you're coming into an organization that's emerging and growing, and you've had to do some of that training. I did that as well. I've been at established organizations, coming into an internal audit function where they had their views, and I've come into organizations where internal audit's brand new. And maybe we could talk about both.
We can start with the fast growing, from the maturity model, the less formal. And honestly, I think the gaps between, the function and leadership is strictly, I think, it's just exposure of going back to what you talked about of what internal audit can do. And it's not just a check the box. It's not, we're not become relevant just at the time of Sarbanes-Oxley. We're there well before, we're there after, and we're there during. It's operational improvement. It's looking at, data integrity, data compliance, just internal processes, making them more efficient for the business so they can achieve their goals. At an individual level, it's making things less manual so they can then focus and like you were saying, it's not just internal audits that's going to be doing critical thinking. The business too, the more critical thinking that we can have people doing, I think we as a company will be moving at a faster rate.
Yeah. And one of the things that we're at a critical stage, and to the credit of the IA, and I know there was a lot of mixed emotions, but when the new standards were issued in 2024 and they, came effective at January 25, if you really read through it and you kind of understand, and even the work that the IA is doing with political advocacy and just advocacy in general, I think we're trying to push, and we talked about the value and so forth, but we're trying to push that internal audit's belief is that we can provide the value. We are more than just this cost center. We're not Milton sitting in the basement with the red swing line stapler anymore. We are a team and function of people that should be sitting at this table with other leaders to bring that holistic view. And one of the things that I feel that leadership perception is starting to change, But where internal audit is, I see a lot more is getting better at is skills that we haven't really practiced in the past as much is better at branding, marketing, and selling ourselves as auditors, but also our team and what we can do.
I completely agree. I'll add to that and say around, I'll call it the federal level, the national level of how the IAA has been, I think, a great advocate of trying to just get our profession a seat at the table. But then you look at the other end of the spectrum, and I think the IAA is also doing an amazing job of at the grassroots, at community colleges, at the local college, of having local chapters, people come and speak, a class in internal law. All of these little things matter because then when we translate that to companies and leadership, you'll be surprised. Here at companies, and even here, the leaders understand they've read it. They've read something. They saw a little clip on internal law, IIA, and they can do this. That they do these things. They do cyber reviews, cybersecurity. They do pen testing. We don't necessarily always need to go and hire somebody. So I think it's coming, but I think the IA is really helping us get there.
Yeah, we need a big support group. That's what they're building up, and it's individually we're all working together towards the same goal. So I would say that one of the things that we talked about was kind of hypergrowth, but maybe in kind of taking this to the next spin, and we've both been at very large organizations as well, and in the folks that we've talked to, I think it's sometimes there's a trap on the small company is there's this education because maybe some people just have never heard of internal audit. But then when you're at a larger organization, it's maybe that there are people that have worked with internal audit and it's all based on their prior experience. So at a small company, even a startup, it's education. And sometimes you can get easier buy-in based on what you're doing. But at a larger corporation, it's more of retraining and educating into maybe you had a great experience and we want to continue that, or maybe you had a bad experience, but how can we learn from that and expand upon it? So I think that from a larger organization, it's similar, but it's a little different, and the challenges can be a little different between what internal audit's trying to do, but also leadership's view.
I completely agree. There's with the more mature companies, they have preconceived ideas. They have either a good or a bad experience, and that stays with them. We'll call it less mature companies, it's a completely different message. It's more hand-holding, and it's more patience. I think it's patience on both sides. Honestly, I think it comes down to just putting in the work, and the work is, okay, we're doing this to help all of us get better, and better at what? Operational efficiency, for you to have more time to be able to think about problems that you aren't able to devote to. Manually processing AP invoices. Okay, but maybe now you can look and say, are we paying too much for some vendor? Should we go and get a new vendor? Because you don't have time. But now you may have time to do some thinking and look at the data. So I think with us, it's spending the time with these people and explaining on both ends. One, getting rid of preconceived ideas, and the other is helping them along the journey and showing them, as best we can, the why.
Being in a high growth org right now, would you want to share an example of kind of the slowdown concern in a high growth organization?
Yeah, it's real. It's something as simple as a policy adoption, something that most people in most companies would think, okay, is the language in here? Can I, as someone who would be having to follow it, can I adopt it? Oh, okay, yes. But at other companies, at high growth companies, it's a little different. First and foremost is, will this affect product? Will this slow down the business? Will this slow down the database? Will this? And that hesitancy forces conversations that I did not anticipate. And it goes back to, I think, pivoting, understanding, and maybe having not the main goal isn't of adoption. I have a micro goal. And the micro goal might be, okay, let's get everyone on the same table and let's start from there. We're all on the same team. We all have the same goal, and clearly spell out what the objective is and why I'm doing it. To your point, maybe they have preconceived ideas about this from a prior company.
Yeah, and especially in a high growth area, things move so fast. And now with AI being a big thing there, and we got to innovate very fast, or we got to bring in maybe a solution, and we don't have time to get it perfect. We got to get it 80%. And I think that's again where audits changing and so forth. And it's like, hey, we don't have to come in and do a 2-week or a 2-month audit. We could come do something that's even maybe a day long analysis of something very critical. So we're not going to slow you down. We're just going to give you another pair of eyes, kick the tires for you, just make sure, it's like, if you're driving along and it feels like one of your tires might have a little leak in it, you're not going to have to spend all day there. They can quickly take the tire off, just evaluate, say, oh, it looks like you have a tiny little leak. We could plug it. And after an hour, you're back on the road. And audit can do those things. We're not there to per se slow you down, but we can, someone I once heard said the best thing: you need to slow down to speed up. So we're tapping the brakes a little, like any type of car, so that you can get around that corner faster. And that's definitely what I'm seeing in high growth.
So it's funny you say that. So I was just thinking of something that just happened. So I was reading a Slack message, and in this message, in this group thread, they were talking about AI assisted code. And someone said, hey, how can we check AI assisted code? Do we need to check it? And so then, to your point, I said, using that mantra of slow down to speed up, I made a simple suggestion of, hey guys, how about we just add these tiny, small checks at the very end, these small checks on the code. And there's tools out there that will recognize AI assisted code, and will literally, you could color code it or whatever, right? So then that you have an extra scrutiny over it. Something as simple as that simple suggestion created credibility, and it didn't slow the business down. We slowed down for, I don't know, tiny bit, but everything's back to normal. So I think it's understanding, providing value, surgically being precise, is going to pay huge dividends.
And two, if they ran that and they found a significant error, I'm not saying that, oh, you're coming as a hero, but together as an organization that could have resulted in a very big slowdown. So, it's those little things that matter.
Exactly. It's being proactive, right? Being preventive. We always, if we're talking about like the control culture, control words, preventive is what we want. Automated, yes, but you don't want to look at something after the fact. Ideally, it's always, you want to detect errors, identify the errors, and then have some type of remediation, something in place, which does not slow the business down. We only want to help speed it up.
And as I've always told you, Sanjay, it's the small, tiny, little unknown that worries me more than the big known. Going back to trust, how does building trust, what does it look like in a developing organization? And I'll chat, just kind of chime on this first, because I've been in this situation before, and I would say that the most important thing is, before you're going to just start doing any type of audits or making any type of preconceived assumptions of things, is the best way to build the trust is just go out and just start having conversations, just starting to speak to people. And then this is when I remember being at a developing company and even starting an audit function, but I just spent time letting people get to know who I was, doing the educating, but at the same time, just lots and lots and lots of listening because, I've, been through the situation where they hadn't had the experience. But if you can go through that and start building up the trust of those conversations, then you can take it to the next point and start doing some audits that are aligned with what they need. It may not fit to the cookie cutter type audit, but something that's more of where we need to be at that stage of the organization. Sort of just even going to the policy aspect. I mean, I had one where it was just talking about and hearing what their needs are, but then bringing up some concerns that we had within the systems. And in actuality, the company I was at this point in time, the systems were over controlled, in fact, and they were causing issues from a policy perspective. So we had to rethink about what we were doing from the system standpoint to get and some tweaking to the policy so that we could find a happy medium for everyone. And it wasn't that we were degrading control or bringing more risk in. It's just the viewpoints. And so by listening to everyone's counter argument, you can actually come into the room and have some honest conversations.
I completely agree. I think your point about reaching out to many people and having conversations. So I'll give you like a real live example. When I joined here at PayJoy, I realized I was the very first hire in internal audit. And so I told myself my 30, 60, 90, my goal is literally to meet and set up one-on-ones with heads of all the groups across all the countries to kind of set the table when internal audit will be having a real seat at the table. And it did take 45, maybe in 3 months, 4 months, maybe a little longer until I had a couple opportunities. And I was really grateful for having those relationships already kind of created. So when I had the ask of, hey guys, we really need to get all hands on deck. We need to address this issue in our system. We need to have real guardrails in place to satisfy our auditors. We have a deadline. We need to follow this prescribed process, and let's work collaboratively together. And we were able to get a solution from zero in 45 days, go live. And we had over 300 people, were affected. They all joined the go live. And if you had asked me before we started, if I had never had these conversations with these people for months, I don't think I would have had the cooperation, the support, and we wouldn't have been a success.
Yeah, absolutely. And this kind of goes into maybe beyond a little bit of the developing company, but how does trust enable earlier insights? And kind of to your point, this reminded me of one of the companies I worked at, and we were going through. We had 5 different ERP systems through different business units, and we were doing a Oracle implementation. Everyone was going, okay, we have all these different systems. We're going to go to one single system. And we asked the lead within the company who was leading the implementation for the organization if internal audit could participate this right at the get-go. And we explained to the audit committee, to management, that we wanted to push off a couple audits so that we could allocate the time to sit in on the discovery meetings, on meetings where we're discussing different configurations and so forth. And what we were trying to do was to understand how we have maybe different policies, different controls that from these disparate systems, and now we're all going to a single source of truth. And what really happened was we were able to learn the system and the process along with everyone else. And then when decisions were being made, we were able to bring enough credibility to these conversations to say, well, we noticed that, this business unit has this, but did we consider this, how it's going to impact everybody else? And just throw another monkey wrench into this was a no customization. It was all configuration. So by doing this, we were able to come away at the end of the day with a really good set of controls that mitigated all the risk. We had a system that went live that we were able to participate in, make sure that when training happened, that we could help kind of support some of that. We weren't part of any controls, but then when we had to actually go out and do our walkthroughs, when we had to go and do our testing, we already had that built in, and our stakeholders got to know us during the implementation, so they felt comfortable. And we worked together, and if there were minor modifications that had to be made, it built the trust that they would call us and say, hey, we're thinking of maybe making a change here. Do you guys have any concern with this? And they were be able to be proactive. And so we were brought into that. So I feel that really was able to bring in early insight and build that, trust credibility.
So that system implementation made me think, of stuff here. And I think you just talked about it, which is, you got a good set of controls. You had a successful go live because of credibility and getting everyone a seat at the table. Here, what I have been doing, because I know we don't have an internal audit function, I've just been rolling up my sleeves and doing things that I know internal audit can do, but we're not, quote unquote, that's not what people think of us as doing. Example, drafting from scratch an SOP that is operational in nature, that is for the business, for a group. I've done it like 5, 6, 7 times. Why? Because I know in the end, there will be a time when you said there was walkthroughs, there's controls, there's testing. I've created that buy-in with this person, with these people, creating policies, creating a process flow map, identifying data leakage, data inconsistency, working on email naming convention for consultants, for crying out loud, right? But you and I, internal auditors, data matters. Data integrity, data consistency across the organization matters. And you said that system that you went go live was the source of truth. Now imagine that system, that one table was corrupted. Well, if that one system is the source of truth and is feeding other systems and other downstream processes, and we have reliance, walkthroughs, well, you know where this is going to lead, and you know who's going to be left holding the bag. So,
Absolutely.
right, when it's good. So I think putting in the work, doing what you did is tantamount. It's important, it's vital, and that's what I'm trying to do here.
And as you told me, that rolling up your sleeves, doing some of these things is starting to pay dividends. And you're getting, and where your organization's going and heading, they're already coming to you in advance, which doing that little legwork up front has bought you that trust.
Because like you said this time and time and again, if you put the work in, if you're able to put yourself in their shoes and envision their risks, what keeps them up at night, if you can help them for their top, not all, just their top, then what you said, and I totally agree, you will have a seat at the table.
So let's flip the script here. Where do audit teams unintentionally undermine trust?
One that comes to mind is one of my prior companies. Scope was, very well defined, and hours were defined. Let's call it a short audit, a month. Well, there's friction when we're on month 3. There's friction when our recommendations are outside of the scope of the initial audit. And it's a What are you here? What are you doing? Why are you poking your nose there? That wasn't part of your scope. And why are you taking so long? Do you not understand? It's the competency and understanding this quote unquote getting up to speed, scope creep. All of this could undermine internal audits' long term value.
From my perspective, and I absolutely agree with what you're saying there, is I see a couple factors where audit's going to unintentionally undermine trust. One is going to be with external audit and internal audit. And if your audit team is not having routine and consistent conversations with your external auditor, and then you guys are making the same requests for the same things or not explaining to the stakeholders why maybe that request has to be made twice or why there's difference between external audit and internal audit, then there's going to be this undermined trust because then everyone's going to feel everyone's wasting my time. Internal audit already asked for this or external audit already asked for this. Why do I have to give you twice? The other thing that I see too going into sometimes in these audits is depending on the team and so forth. Yeah, you have your scope, but maybe there's two components of the audit. You're going to do your typical operational audit, but then there's an IT component. And maybe you're bringing in some IT auditors that are going to be doing this. If you're not going in as a team and you've communicated this, then there can be scope creeps. So it's got to be a unifying force. Don't try to it's one audit team. And I have seen where it's one audit team and I have seen where the two teams go separate. It shouldn't be that way. You should be a unifying force and coming in and working together. And to be honest, the IT function can learn from the operational function or financial function and vice versa. In fact, I'd use every audit as an opportunity to cross-train each other. The more we're all learning and working at it. But the last where I've seen this, pardon me, I know you want to chime in, is with a new auditor. And it's really on the managers, the seniors, et cetera, to help explain the why to an auditor. If a senior doesn't explain the why to the staff, or the manager doesn't explain the why to the senior, or vice versa, whatever, then you're going to have what you said, the scope creep. And that's when you start going down the rabbit hole and someone sees something that, oh yeah. And I've seen this so many times where someone tells me a story where, yeah, I had a staff and they spent hours testing something only to find out that they didn't ask the right questions and it was a nothing.
I completely agree with everything you said and made me think about at a higher level. IA can lose trust in a hurry, and that's at audit committee.
Oh, yes.
So I've been an observer in several audit committee meetings where the questions asked were the same from the prior, and there was a sense that internal audit had lost its focus, had lost confidence, were not in touch with the company's risks and objectives, and there was a misalignment. The reporting that was being presented was not what was expected. And then you see they bring us back, and it could end up being fully outsourced, co-sourced model. And that's, I think, worst case. But the other thing that you talked about, and I totally agree, is with new people coming on board, there's a risk there. But you also talked about rotation. I love that concept of leveraging people in the organization who giving them exposure. You never know. I'm always a firm believer that why go outside when we have untapped potential sitting here, who know the systems, who know our processes, who already are up to speed on the basics. that 90 days is out the window. They can hit the ground running. It's just a matter of teaching them, okay, what is completeness? What is accuracy? What is data integrity? What is a control? Why do we do it? We do it for this. I think if there's a lot of things we do that is teachable.
I do want to touch, and you brought up an excellent point, is about the audit committee. And the thing that I feel that internal audit really needs to make sure that we're doing is verifying our alignment with the audit committee and management. Again, internal audit should have a direct line to the audit committee, and there will be an administrative line to someone on the management team, most likely a CFO or a CEO. But you have to have an honest conversation to make sure that everyone understands where those lines are, what internal audit's role is, but also to what are the expectations of everybody. Because if you're not all aligned, that's where the trust can be broken unintentionally. Again, going real quickly back to what we were talking about, the new standards, and there are things in there that are being called out. And I know it's a tough conversation, but to bring some of the new requirements, then things that are being brought up about, I would say, expectations from the standards, even if maybe the audit committee or management doesn't agree, but it can be a good pivot to at least engage those conversations to start getting everyone aligned. So again, and even just saying to the point to your audit committee management, let's talk about this so that trust isn't broken. So let's go this. Over the next 6 to 12 months, what is one meaningful change leaders could make in your mind over the next 6 to 12 months?
I think it's the elephant in the room, which is AI, is we can't put our head in the sand and just ignore it. We have to acknowledge it. We have to have we have to start talking, at least to your point, start talking about what guardrails at X company, Y company could look like. I think to me, having a discussion, having a roadmap of what a solution might look like would be the biggest win.
And I would say over the next 6 to 12 months, and I agree, AI is the big elephant in the room. I would argue that there needs to be a hybrid view on it as well, and making sure you're going out, having those conversations. What is the company's idea, et cetera? Internal audit, my first thing would say is within the next 3 months, make sure that your internal audit team, whether that's internally or however you want to do it, make sure the entire team of an internal audit function is literate on AI, that everyone on the team has the same understanding of all concepts of AI. Not that you're all going to be data scientists and et cetera, but how is AI used? What are the different type of models, different type of systems? And while you're doing that, if the audit team has that literacy, then you can go out and start asking smarter questions. But then at the same time, I would also then say is you can also then help the organization make sure that everyone else in the organization is literate on AI. And the reason I say this is we're moving so fast, and this goes to the slow down to speed up concept, is everyone's at a different perspective and view of AI and what it is and how it can be done. And there may be things coming from the board team where if we don't have the right literacy, we can't educate everyone. So if everyone had that basic understanding over the next 6 to 12 months, then you can make sure that internal audit goes out and has conversations. How are people using AI? And with the literacy, people with sort of understanding is, oh, I shouldn't be using my personal phone with ChatGPT on it because there's an exposure to the organization. And that's a bad thing for all of us. So again, that's the one thing that I would highly recommend. The other thing is, and there's the hybrid part, make sure you don't lose your audit skills. It's going to be as vital, as important as anything with AI. If you don't want it to be a crutch, you're going to be using AI in internal audit, you're going to be auditing AI. But if you don't know how to still drive the car and you're over relying it, and as I say this all the time, I'm not going to be the one, I don't think anyone else listening to this is going to be the one that wants to get on the airplane that's on autopilot with no person behind that yoke.
So let me jump in real quick, because what you're talking about, I completely agree. And I think that what you're saying is critical thinking. That's what we can't lose. We need to embrace it. We need more of it. And when we start using it and leveraging AI with the tools that will enable us to spend more time thinking, leveraging our internal audit skills to help the business, not only us, but the overall business, I think we all will be growing and speeding up.
Absolutely. Well, Sanjay, this has been a fun conversation.
Hey, thank you so much. This has been fantastic.
Hey Audit Pros, GAM is back March 9th through the 11th in Las Vegas. It's where internal audit leaders come together to talk governance, emerging risk, and what's next for the profession. If you want smart conversation, fresh ideas, and some great networking along the way, head to the IIA website and register for GAM today. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and rate us. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also catch other episodes on YouTube or at theiia.org. That's THEIIA.org.